From stalking Beatles to murdering civil rights leaders and even investigating magic mind powers, the FBI has plenty of skeletons in their closet, or rather, their filing cabinets. And this is just the beginning. We'll be airing the Bureau's dirty linen in today's episode of The Infographic Show, FBI leaked documents that shocked the world. Number 20. Let's begin with some name-dropping. COINTEL Pro document leaks, more on those later, revealed that the FBI had surveillance files on a truly ridiculous number of American celebrities. The Bureau targeted celebs that they feared had communist ties or were vocally against the Vietnam War. On the communist front, they kept files on classic comedians like Charlie Chaplin and Groucho Marx. For their anti-Vietnam positions, they kept files on Beatles frontman John Lennon, Take Me Home Country Roads singer John Denver, and actor Jane Fonda. Who else were they spying on? The list is insane, but it includes Frank Sinatra, Elvis, Michael Jackson, Lou Costello, Sonny Bono, Bob Dylan, Mickey Mantle, Marilyn Monroe, and a certain boxer whose inclusion will be extremely relevant later. Oh, and it goes without saying that they didn't find anything useful on any of those people. But for all those celebrity enemies, they had an even more shocking celebrity on their side. Number 19. Walt Disney was a secret FBI informant. While many in Hollywood were worrying about the FBI coming after them, a document uncovered by a 1993 Freedom of Information Act requested by the New York Times revealed that Disney worked with the FBI. He ratted out fellow Hollywood workers with un-American communist ties. Who knows how many people ended up on watch lists or in jail because the creator of Mickey Mouse told the FBI that they were secret commies. Disney was so cooperative with the FBI that he was given the title Full Special Agent in Charge Contact in 1954. Incidentally, future president and then actor Ronald Reagan was also an FBI informant, operating in the same way as Disney. He was listed as Source T10 in the official FBI documentation, which leads us back to a shocking truth in the world of politics. Number 18. Formed in 1908, the FBI wasted no time going after suspected enemies of the state, and in the 1930s, they decided to go after the highest legal power in the land, the U.S. Supreme Court. The Supreme Court Conference Room is one of the most vital chambers in the country, where the judges convene to discuss their legal judgments on the cases that reach their bench. And agents of the FBI were caught wiretapping communications that come in and out of that room. That seems pretty sus, to say the least. J. Edgar Hoover, the original director of the FBI and an extremely vindictive and corrupt man who will appear a lot in this video, claimed that this wiretap was in response to claims of people leaking Supreme Court decisions. But most historians and legal experts agree that this was probably just an excuse to cover his back after getting caught. And bugging the most important judges in the country is still one of the more mild revelations you'll see in this video. Speaking of surveillance. Number 17. The Patriot Act, ushered in by the Bush administration after 9/11, was already an extremely controversial piece of legislation. It has been accused by many of everything from overreach of authority to straight-up human rights abuses, like kidnapping and torture. And the FBI is responsible for their fair share of Patriot Act abuses, as later released documents revealed. They used the Patriot Act sunset provision as an excuse to access and track all telephone calls made in the U.S. They also made wide use of exigent letters, a provision that allowed them to get around information-gathering protocols by claiming it was an emergency. These loopholes let them spy on the American people en masse. And you thought the NSA were the only ones who did that. And this isn't even exclusively a post-Patriot Act problem. In 1985, a wiretapping and civil liberties report by the U.S. Congress found that the FBI had participated in 7,000 cases of surveillance on American citizens from 1940 to 1960. Number 16. Sometimes the FBI spied on and harassed people they knew weren't any threat, and we have the leaked documents to prove it. The Bureau's file on the Black Student Union, or BSU, revealed some of the Bureau's views on certain groups. The BSU was formed to fight for the rights and representation of newly integrated black students on college campuses, and the FBI file called the group dormant, incompetent, and showing, quote, no radical or militant ideas. Despite this, it was recommended that agents still spy on, infiltrate, and gather blackmail material on the group. It makes you wonder how many other groups they've infiltrated, but we'll talk about their much more horrifying methods of doing that later. Number 15. We've probably all heard of the no-fly list. It's not a real legal document, just an informal wink and handshake between airlines about certain people who are too much trouble to let on a plane. But the lack of people's knowledge in this area can make it a perfect tool for manipulation. According to some Muslim American whistleblowers, They have been using that as a weapon against people. A Portland Muslim named Jonas Fikra attends a mosque where at least 9 different people have been forbidden from flying. He's also among the several people who claimed that the FBI was using the no-fly list as a threat for Muslims who aren't willing to become spies on their own community on the FBI's behalf. That's a choice. Either you agree to be a rat on the people who attend your mosque services, or you kiss your flying privileges goodbye. And Fikra, by his own account, got a particularly rough experience of this. When the 36-year-old Eritrean-born American denied the FBI their information, he was taken to a foreign jail and, according to him, tortured. And then he launched a lawsuit against the FBI, citing several other people who had gone public about their experience, like Jamal Tarhouni and Michael Migliore. Sadly, if other leaked documents and reports are to be believed, this kind of coercion and cruelty is the least of the FBI's problems. Number 14. From the downright evil to the downright stupid, we have the 2010 incident that unfolded between the FBI and 2 Chicago activists named Mick Kelly and Lyndon Gaboy, which resulted in some leaked documents for the dumbest reason imaginable. So why were Kelly and Gaboy under the FBI's legal microscope in the first place? Well, the couple were members of both the Freedom Road Socialist Organization and the Committee to Stop FBI Repression. Given their connections to this scene, the FBI wanted to make sure they weren't planning anything subversive, so they sent FBI agents over in a raid to completely turn over the couple's apartment, stealing thousands of documents in the process. But this isn't about what they took, it's about what they left behind. 7 months after the incident, while looking through their own filing cabinets, Kelly and Gaboy found an FBI operation plan that had been left behind by the raiding agents. It not only contained the details about the raid, but also plans to investigate and interrogate 2 completely different activists, Meredith Abbey and Jessica Ray Sundin. Their trip to Colombia to attend a peace summit led the FBI to suspect them that they were connected to the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia. It's a rare occasion that the FBI unwittingly leaks their own incriminating documents as part of a truly ridiculous oversight, but that is somehow still less shameful than what comes next. Number 13. In the 1960s and 1970s, the FBI was seriously investigating extrasensory perception, or ESP, by which we mean people with psychic powers. Yes, really. It all began with William Foos, a man who claimed that he could read text through walls. The FBI investigated him extensively, given that these powers could either be an asset or a threat to national security. Of course, it turned out to be nothing. William Foos was just another huckster who'd wasted FBI time and taxpayer money. But it started again in the 1970s, when TV psychic Uri Geller took the world by storm with his spoon-bending antics. Again, this turned out to be another delicious nothing burger, as there was no scientific basis discovered for psychic powers. It was just a big, embarrassing dead end. And the fact that the press reports on these scandals is exactly why we have our next insane entry. Number 12. One of the FBI's many stated enemies is the American free press. Journalists have frequently fallen under their scrutiny, as shocking FBI documents have revealed. The FBI used their legal weight to obtain records from 21 different phone lines used by more than 100 Associated Press reporters, hoping to keep track of their activities. They also used search warrants to harass Fox News reporter James Rosen, getting around laws designed to protect journalists from these kind of frivolous legal attacks. And of course, in 2010, they used more of those legally dubious exigent letters that we mentioned earlier to obtain the phone records of 7 New York Times and Washington Post reporters and researchers. It was a move that was equal parts an attempt to surveil and intimidate reporters who might want to keep track of their misdeeds. But what do you think is worse in the long run? Using your legal power to suppress reporters, or knowingly working with violent psychopaths? Number 11. Working in the FBI can lead you to having some strange bedfellows. Whatever gets justice done, right? Even if that means working hand in hand with a vicious mafia hitman who is still actively killing people while working as an informant. And somehow, documents leaked decades after the case revealed it was even worse. Joseph the Animal Barboza Jr. didn't get that nickname because he was a party animal. He was a New England mob hitman with exceptionally brutal tactics, including using his teeth on opponents. Working under the Patriarca crime family, he murdered at least 20 people from 1964 to 1970, and he took the lives of even more, likely with the collaboration of the FBI. At some point, the animal got picked up by the FBI and entered the Witness Protection Program, informing on both allies and enemies to save his own skin. And given that he was a pretty central figure in the Massachusetts underworld, this information helped them put away plenty of other goons. The problem was the animal was still a volatile homicidal creep and murdered someone while directly under the FBI's watch in 1965. But because the animal was too important as an informant for the FBI to go down, they sent down 4 other people for his latest murder, using the sadistic hitman as a star witness. These innocent people were sentenced to decades in prison because the Bureau needed the actual killer to help in their investigations. Later, in 1976, the animal was taken out by his own crew, blasted at close range with a shotgun after being exposed as a snitch. He was a man so unpleasant that after his death, even his lawyer, F. Lee Bailey, said, quote, "With all due respect to my former client, I don't think society has suffered a great loss." But the 4 men who'd gone down for one of his crimes did suffer a great loss. They weren't cleared of their charges until 2001, by which point half of them had died in jail. And a dark twist? Joseph the Animal Barboza Jr. wasn't even close to the nastiest gangster that the FBI worked with, as years of declassified documents have shown us. Number 10. When you're thinking of infamous American gangsters, the first name that comes to mind might be Al Capone or John Gotti. But Irish mobster James Whitey Bulger wouldn't be too far behind. Bulger was a manipulative crime genius with a violent streak who ruled the Boston underworld for years. And of course, he was a close personal friend of the FBI too. So much so that their actions actively helped him increase his power against rival gangsters in the area. He had been a star informant, or a strategist, as Bulger himself liked to put it, for the Bureau since 1975. His liaison was his childhood friend, FBI agent John Connolly, who Bulger easily turned into a tool to advance his own interests, allowing him to use the FBI as a weapon. Bulger's minion, Stephen the Rifleman Flemmi, gave him incriminating dirt on the Angiulo crime family, which Bulger then passed on to the feds. This decimated the gangsters and created a power vacuum that Bulger and his goons gladly filled. In return, they lavished the FBI with cash and expensive gifts in exchange for keeping legal scrutiny off of them. Things got so bad that the thoroughly corrupted Agent Connolly started informing Bulger when other gangsters were going to inform on him, allowing Bulger to have them killed. It's not a stretch to say that the FBI were essentially acting as ball boys for a murderous crime lord. This went on for years until Bulger was at last sent down and his criminal empire collapsed. No thanks at all to the FBI agents who helped him along the way. Number 9. Before we get into the next insane examples on the list, you may find yourself asking, who is leaking so many of these files? And the answer to that, for a lot of these, you can thank one small but brave group, the Citizens Commission to Investigate the FBI. They were a small group who didn't much like the role that the FBI was playing in suppressing anti-Vietnam War activists, so they decided to break through their wall of silence and get one over on the feds. In 1971, they performed a stunning break-in on an FBI field office in Media, Pennsylvania. And we cannot stress enough, these weren't expert secret agents, they were just a bunch of volunteers on a mission. They were able to infiltrate the outer layer of security by putting up a piece of paper that said, "Please don't lock this door tonight," on a window. And it somehow worked. And then they were able to jimmy their way into the file room because all the agents and the guards in attendance were distracted by watching a much-anticipated Muhammad Ali fight that evening. The group stole over 1,000 files and distributed them to every media outlet they could, exposing so many of the FBI's dirty little secrets that we're discussing right now. And the beautiful irony of this happening during the Ali fight? He was one of the many celebrities that the FBI kept files on. Number 8. One of the many files leaked as a result of the Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI raid was one concerning the assassination of Fred Hampton, the leader of the Black Panthers. Hampton, along with fellow leader Mark Clark, was murdered in a Chicago police raid executed before dawn on December 4, 1969. The story at the time was that there had been a brutal shootout that simply left the Black Panthers leaders dead. But in reality, the police had fired between 82 and 99 rounds and the Panthers had only returned 1. At the time, it was framed as the work of the Chicago police, but the leaked documents revealed it was all a part of their wider COINTEL Pro scheme of Hoover's FBI. More on the insane specifics of that later. First, in the early 1970s, it was revealed that the Chicago Black Panther Party Chief of Security, William O'Neill, was an informant on the FBI's payroll. This clearly could have created a vulnerability that they could exploit when it came to murdering Fred Hampton and Mark Clark. A leaked FBI document also showed that they had a detailed floor plan of the apartment where the assassinations took place, supplied to the police before the raid. And also, before the raid, O'Neill, the turncoat working for the FBI, slipped Hampton a secobarbital sedative to ensure that he couldn't fight back when the armed cops came streaming in. Some accounts claim that Hampton was shot point-blank in the head while prone, and that after he was shot, one of the cops said, quote, "He's good and dead now." Hampton was only 21 years old when he was murdered. Just one more casualty of J. Edgar Hoover's campaign against the American civil rights movement under COINTEL Pro. Speaking of insane racism from the FBI. Number 7. Race maps. On name alone, you can see that we're getting into dicey territory here. According to shocking documents unearthed by the ACLU in 2011, the Bureau used domain management assets to create racial maps of different communities across the United States, hoping to build predictive models of crimes to be committed based on ethnicity. Yes, you heard that right. It was essentially racial profiling on a massive scale. They mapped out all the Latino communities in New Jersey and Alabama to root out street gang activity. They did the same for African Americans in Georgia to find, quote, black separatists, Middle Eastern groups in Detroit for terrorist activity, and Chinese and Russian communities in San Francisco for Russian mob and triad activities. Maybe the real threat is coming from within. Number 6. One of the mandates of the FBI is stopping domestic terror attacks, but as some leaked documents have revealed, they also have a really unpleasant track record of inciting those terror attacks so they can arrest people involved afterwards. But how do they do that? There have been several incidents of undercover FBI operatives infiltrating online groups and posing as like-minded individuals. They slowly convince the people around them to become more radical and then even push them into performing acts of violent extremism. One example is an Oregon college student, Mohammed Osman Mohamud, who was talked into attempting a terrorist act by FBI agents in 2009. In conversation with these FBI deep cover agents, he formed the idea that he should use a van full of explosives to blow up a nearby Christmas tree festival in Portland. And the FBI basically did all the rest. One of the agents provided Mohammed with a van filled with 6 55-gallon drums of inert material, harmless blasting caps, a detonator cord, and a gallon of diesel fuel to make the van smell flammable. The agents then agreed to drive Mohammed to his destination while he sat in the passenger seat. Moments after they arrived, the trap was sprung and the student was arrested. When the news and the documents around this went public, along with a number of other cases just like it, there were huge accusations of entrapment and even radicalization. A dark question lingered. Would any of these people have attempted to commit these acts if the FBI agents hadn't pushed them to do it? But hey, as you're about to find out, everyone makes mistakes. Number 5. Not all classified FBI files end up getting leaked because of enterprising infiltrators or attorneys with Freedom of Information Act requests. Sometimes important FBI files end up in places where they shouldn't due to pure, embarrassing incompetence. And this was the case for high-ranking FBI agent John O'Neill. In July of 2000, O'Neill lost a briefcase containing the annual field office report, which contained, among other things, quote, a description of every counter-espionage and counterterrorism program in New York. This sent everyone into panic mode. The briefcase was thankfully later found with no evidence of infiltration, indicating that it was stolen by petty thieves rather than agents of international espionage. But a high-ranking FBI agent being outfoxed by common thieves basically spelled the end of O'Neill's career, leading to a forced early retirement. He took another job as the head of security at the World Trade Center shortly afterward and was then among the thousands killed in the 9/11 terrorist attack. It was a tragic turn of fate. Losing that briefcase full of important documents started a direct line toward his death a little over a year later. Number 4. If you're on their enemy list, not being inside the United States won't necessarily save you from the activity of the FBI, as documents revealed by the ACLU have shown. Welcome to the frightening and legally messy world of proxy detentions. So, what is a proxy detention? In the context of the FBI, it's when they work with a foreign government to detain someone they don't like. Then they have this foreign government soften up the suspect, sometimes through methods nominally illegal in the United States, like torture, before entering to question them for the FBI's interests. And there are multiple examples of this happening. One is Amir Mishal, who was detained at the Kenyan border by a joint U.S., Kenyan, and Ethiopian task force in 2007. According to the ACLU, Mishal was transferred between 3 different East African countries without charge, access to counsel, or presentment before a judicial officer, all at the behest of the U.S. government. FBI agents interrogated Mishal more than 30 times during his detention. A similar thing happened to Naji Hamdan, an LA-based Lebanese-American businessman who was interviewed by the FBI several times. After he moved to the UAE, he was detained there too, where he was interrogated, beaten, and tortured for 3 whole months. At one point, an unknown American man participated in his torture who seemed to have been knowledgeable of things he said in prior interviews with the FBI, suggesting that there was collusion between the FBI and the UAE security forces. And while both of these were Bush-era cases, there is evidence that these FBI proxy detentions could have continued into the 2010s. American teenager Ghulet Mohammed was detained in Kuwait, possibly on orders of the FBI, who had been previously interested in Mohammed. Number 3. One of the FBI's most hated nemeses wasn't a terrorist or a serial killer or a mobster. It was iconic civil rights leader Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Under the iron fist of J. Edgar Hoover, the Bureau saw King's campaigning for equality of the races, as well as political and economic reform, as one of the most pressing threats to the status quo. And while millions across the globe found his 1963 I Have a Dream speech to be powerful and inspiring, the top brass of the FBI saw this as the straw that broke the racist camel's back. In a memo later leaked to the public, 2 days after the address, FBI Domestic Intelligence Chief William Sullivan said, "We must mark him now, if we have not done so before, as the most dangerous person of the future in this nation from the standpoint of communism and national security." Hoover approved sweeping surveillance programs into King's personal life, hoping to prove that he had credible communist ties that they could then use as an excuse to arrest him. But despite going on for a year, they didn't find any evidence that King was a secret communist, which in the icy heat of the Cold War was about as bad as being found to be a cannibal. However, the FBI snoops did find a consolation prize. King was having numerous extramarital affairs, and they compiled a package of compromising sex tapes that they hoped to use to twist King's arm. And this led to the somehow even more horrifying discovered document in this example, the 1964 King blackmail letter believed to have been directly penned by Domestic Intelligence Chief Sullivan, disguised as a black citizen. In the letter, he hurled vicious insults at King and held the evidence of his affairs over him, containing charming extracts like, "You have been on the record, all your adulterous acts, your sexual orgies extending far into the past. This one is but a tiny sample. I know you for what you are, an evil, abnormal beast." The FBI's intent in this letter was convincing King to end his civil rights career and his own life within 34 days, or all the tapes would be leaked. Thankfully, King didn't bend to the blackmail, and the plan is left as little more than a disgusting farce in FBI history. And it was part of an even bigger disgusting farce. Number 2. We've name-dropped COINTEL a lot in this video, but what exactly was this sweeping initiative discovered by the Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI in 1971? Short for Counterintelligence Program, COINTEL was J. Edgar Hoover's baby. It was a huge and often extremely illegal series of operations that aimed to expose, disrupt, misdirect, discredit, or otherwise neutralize the American civil rights and organized labor movements. That was Hoover's phrasing, not ours. And as we've seen from all the examples mentioned in this video so far, they had some downright evil tactics for achieving their goals. And in a more general sense, they used tactics that wouldn't be all that surprising to see in a Stasi playbook. They infiltrated groups with undercover agents and paid informants, stoking internal conflicts that often caused them to fall apart from within. They were not above blackmail, gaslighting, and other psychological warfare, and even murder in cases like Fred Hampton. 85% of COINTEL resources were dedicated to taking down left-wing subversive groups playing into the Red Scare culture of the Cold War. Only around 15% of the resources were dedicated to taking down right-wing extremist groups like the National States Rights Party and the Ku Klux Klan. And speaking of the Klan, number 1. Amongst gangsters, hitmen, and Walt Disney, one of the most infamous men that the FBI ever worked with was Gary Thomas Rowe Jr., a special agent that infiltrated the KKK in order to monitor and disrupt their activities. But while doing that, he also participated in some of their most violent and horrifying crimes, all with the FBI being knowingly complicit. In May 1960, he joined the most violent chapter of the Klan in American history, the Eastview Clavern 13. And while with this Clavern, he plotted a vicious 1961 attack on the Freedom Riders in Alabama with his Klan buddies and several corrupt high-ranking members of the Alabama police. They beat the unarmed riders with iron pipes, baseball bats, and bicycle chains. He was also likely involved in the 1963 16th Street Baptist Church bombing, which killed 4 young girls, as well as an attempt to bomb Martin Luther King's motel room. He was also linked to the killing of civil rights activist Viola Liuzzo. When they saw her driving with a black man in Alabama, Rowe and other KKK members chased down her car and shot her dead. When he left FBI service, he was given immunity for all the crimes he committed. How do we know about all this? Well, because Rowe himself admitted it in his 1976 autobiography, My Undercover Years with the Ku Klux Klan, along with his Senate testimony. Seeing as he already received immunity from the FBI for all of his crimes, he didn't have anything to lose, and all of those salacious criminal details certainly helped move copies of his books. It's only the best for the Federal Bureau of Intelligence. Now check out 50 insane declassified FBI secrets you didn't know and more FBI facts and stories. Or watch this instead.